My name is Liz Salway. I live in Fort Washakie, Wyoming. I am enrolled Oglala Lakota, but I live here on the Eastern Shoshone Reservation, which is my mom's reservation.
Would you like to state your name?
Zelma Robertson,
And you're on, where you're from?
Fort Washakie, Wyoming.
So I'll start with my older brother. Um, his name is Stanford Lyle Salway Jr. We went by, but we all called him Lyle. And January 15th, 2013, he was murdered. Um, it was 18 to 20 hours later before, which was I'm sorry, April 16th. I don't know where January came from, this one. But April 16th, the detectives in Lander called me and let me know that he had passed away the day before, that he had been found non-responsive in his apartment at the Teton Motel, and that there had been several different people that had tried to work, trying to revive him. The first one being his significant other, uh, who had administered insulin to him. And they didn't know how much insulin or why she even gave him a shot, but then they said that when they got there, she was trying to do CPR on him. I didn't even know if she knew how to do CPR. And then the ambulance personnel took over and they weren't able to revive him. And the coroners had called it that he had died of natural causes because he was diabetic and he was disabled. And so when I asked them how come, if they were going to be able to do a autopsy, an investigation on it, they told me no because the coroner had already called it natural causes. But I asked them, well, why was she giving him insulin? Why didn't you guys investigate that? She was abusive towards him and stuff because the week before she had beaten him up. And when I went to take him new clothes and new blankets and food and stuff, my brother had bruising on his face and he had black eye. And I told the officers this, but it's like, no, open and shut case, just that was it. So pretty much have come to the realization that nothing can be done, to help us uh, I don't know how to say it, like the findings to be changed that he was actually murdered instead of just dying of natural causes. And it just bothers me a lot because he had been struck by lightning like 10 or 15 years before, and he was a good-hearted person. He didn't deserve to die like this. And I know there was a couple of times before that we were a pool league and he came walking in. It was winter time and it was just cold, and he had a light jacket on, no shirt. I can't remember if he had shoes on or not, but he knew that we'd be at one of the bars playing in pool leagues, and he walked in and he seen my daughter, and so he told her, that she had beaten him up and kicked him out. And my daughter went, her and her dad took him back to his room, and as soon as my daughter walked in to find out what was going on, that woman attacked her. So I know she was very abusive. And to this day I can't remember her name. And I think she's in Evanston. I think that's how they, got rid of her, because she had been in jail prior to him dying when she beat him up. And I think that was their plan of action to get her out of here, was to send her to Evanston. So I don't even know whatever happened to her. And when I asked her name, the detectives pretty much told me that they couldn't release that information to me, you know? So I don't know. But that's my older brother. And this year he would have been 67 years old. But like I said, this happened in 2013. It's been 11 years since he's been gone.
And now would you like to talk about?
Well, my brother Lionel.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Lionel, who we call Hootie, he lived in Fort Hall, Idaho, and I remember it was the 11th of January. My sister, his twin, called me to let me know that he had passed away, and as soon as she let me know, I was talking to my mom, and we got stuff ready, and we took off and went over. But when we got over there, we went to dress him. There was myself, my sister, and I think one or two of her cousins. And we were getting him dressed and stuff, and here kind of noticed some bruising and stuff on him, you know. And I asked her about it, and she said that they had said because he had, you know, fallen. So we got ready for the funeral and the wake and everything. And as we were sitting there, because we did the wake, then we did the services at this other place, and then we went back to her residence to keep him there, and then to do the funeral there the following day. The bruising seemed to come out more and more on his face and his arms and his body, and bumps. So we were paying close attention to that, and we would ask her, well, did you tell the detectives? And she kept getting a hold of the detective or the criminal investigator, sorry, but he would just like already, the coroner, when he found him, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around, but the coroner, when he found him, he claimed his finding was asphyxiation, that he had choked, you know. And he was laying in their bedroom on the floor. And so the criminal investigator kind of said that, yeah, it was because he had fallen over, and they didn't know what he had been doing prior to, you know, the day before, if they were drinking or something. But she was like, no, I don't think this happened, you know. I don't think this happened. Sorry, but because of that, she said it just seems weird that it's coming out on his body now, and it's getting more and more. The appearance is coming more and more. So we finished with his services and everything, but while we were doing the wake, his girlfriend, or his so-called other woman, went and she came in, her and her son, and I think it was her other son, and she had flowers, and she went up and she was standing over my brother crying, and I just got ugly vibes from her. And I hated to do this, you know, be so mean and hateful, you know, at a time when we're putting my brother to rest and stuff, but she was starting to cry, and she had a boot on her foot. And she moved away from the casket, so I went up to the casket and I took her flowers off of him and put them on the table. I just I had a really ugly feeling about it. And I sat back down. Well, the next day during the funeral, she showed up again, and she was still crying and trying to hang on him and everything. And kept noticing that boot, but it wasn't until we left there after his funeral and stuff when we left there and we came back. But we kept, discussing this with my little sister. And here, I told her, you're just gonna have to keep talking for him. And that's when I told her, you're his twin sister. I'm a half sister, even though I don't believe in half and I don't believe in step and stuff like that. It's just, I was like, I'm the older sister, but I'm just a half sister. So you're gonna have to pursue this. So she did. I don't know who was helping her, but she did. And she finally got them to exhume his body. And besides being Native American, big taboo, we're Catholic. So it's like something that we don't do, but we were willing to find out if he was, actually beaten. Because my sister did tell us that when she walked in, when her and her dad were sitting there waiting for the coroner to get done, she noticed that the house was really super clean, and it smelled like pine sol and Clorox and everything, and there was not the table was sitting there, but there was not one chair around that table, and she was noticing stuff, but you could tell that it had just been really cleaned up. So when they finally got to get back there to see my brother, he was laying. There was in the bedroom, kind of away from the bed, but it's like he was cleaned up.
Hmm.
And if somebody's dying of asphyxiation, there's got to be like bodily fluids. There was nothing, and that's so she was like, if he was choking, where's the slobber stains and stuff like that. So when she told us that, and then like I said, we kept noticing all of the bruising and stuff because we sat there. What is it? 4 days, Mom? Mom.
Hi.
It was like 4 days we were over there, and it was getting more and more. It was revealing itself more and more. The bumps and the bruises and stuff in here. So we kept talking to her. When we came home, she finally got a hold of him and that detective or that criminal investigator, and I don't know who he talked to, but they said, yeah, we're going to exhume him. And so we were ready for that. But then because where he died was a different county from where he was buried, it had to go through a total different district attorney and stuff like that. So we had to wait a while longer. But when they finally did, they sent him away to have an autopsy done. And that's when my sister got it back that, on the report that his death was homicide. I mean, big letters too, homicide. And so we pretty much knew that, but in the meantime, come to find out that the reason why they also went with the exhumation was because his significant other and her son were the ones that did this to him, but the son's girlfriend came forward to her parents. She couldn't handle the guilt no more, and she came forward to her parents and told them that she had seen what happened and stuff. So they got a hold of that criminal investigator and said that she was willing to talk to him. So then when he went to meet with her and he recorded this whole thing, she told him that what happened, they had been partying there, and like there was a major party going on, which didn't fit with the fact that the house was totally spotless the next day, But there was a party going on, and they had started kicking and beating him, and they pretty much, beat him to death. And this was out in the living room. So when they had found him in the bedroom, that was another red flag for them. And that's that plus, us telling them that the bruising was coming and stuff like that is why they exhumed him. But when we come to find out that it wasn't even a month, probably not even a month later, they closed his case. Even after it said homicide, they just closed the case. They weren't going to pursue anything on it or nothing. And we, we were like, why? Why would you close it if, he was killed? But they come to tell us that the, what is he called? District attorney for the area. It sat on his desk, and he wouldn't pursue the charges against them. And we don't know. Everyone says because he was retiring, but I'm not sure about that. But the other thing is, so when I went to Billings in July 2023, and I spoke, I did the testimony for the No Invisible Act. I was able to talk to people from the missing and murdered unit, and there are some things that you tend to forget a lot of stuff, even though it doesn't even matter. I can talk about this. Like I said, I post this on my Facebook page every year on their birthday and then on the day of their death. And I forgot a lot of stuff. So while I was in there talking with the agents, I was able to reach my little sister, and she got on the phone with me, and I introduced her to the agents, and so she talked to him, and she reminded me a lot of stuff, and I forgot about the video of that girl when she did her testimony that they had videotaped her. But the agents were kind of surprised because they had videotaped it, plus the homicide findings and everything, that there was nothing, pursued by it. And so they said that after we were getting done up there, they were gonna find this girl, because apparently she was locked up, and they were gonna find her and talk with her, and they're gonna get that videotape and the autopsy findings and stuff and work with that. And I haven't really talked with them. It's been a while since I even emailed them, but I want to stay on top of it because it's already April. It's already May, and it's been almost a year since I talked with them about this. And it's like, the more I don't push it, it's like the more it's fading to the background again. And I don't want to do that because I want justice for my brothers. I want them to be able to rest easy, and these people can't be out there just hurting other people, because the lady's son has already been in trouble 2 other times, and just able to get away with stuff. And it's pretty bad if you have these people that are supposed to be there to protect our people and stuff, and they just let it go. They just don't pursue the fact that somebody was murdered. I mean, you have it black and white. It's homicide, and they're not doing nothing. This guy's out there able to walk around, and that woman's able to walk around. And every time I post it, she has to walk around her job at the casino telling everybody, don't believe everything you read on Facebook. So, she is seeing what I'm putting out there. and she has to pretty much justify it for herself, but I'm not gonna stop. And I seen her down here a couple of times, and it took everything in me not to go, attack her. But I just, no family should have to go through this. Never. We were at least able to bury our brothers, but these ones that are missing and stuff, I feel for them. I feel for the parents that have to bury their kids. Like the elders say, you're never supposed to be the one that has to bury your child. And I know there was drinking going on. And I'm not saying my brothers weren't angels, I mean, we're angels, but I know there was drinking going on. I don't know the extent of any drug use and stuff, but see, all of that, if they would have taken the time, and this is what pisses me off, is most coroners, they're put into these positions by us, the people, because we're the ones that vote them into place, They're not willing to take the time to investigate. And
Not when it comes to an Indian.
no, I told these agents in Billings that. And I said, these coroners, they're not natives. Comes to an Indian, they're gonna just call it, let it go. I said, a lot of these suicides, I'm kind of going off track here for a minute, but a lot of these suicides on the reservation, the coroner comes out, calls it a suicide, leaves. But you're sitting there, or you have people sitting there who talk about stuff later. And this person was being beaten up. They were choked out. They were dragged outside. Next day, they're found hanging. And, just because that's the way they were sitting there when the coroner pulled up, he's just automatically going to write it off as suicide. Not do an autopsy on a suicide. So I pointed out to them, I pointed it out to both business councils. The coroner has to start doing autopsies on these suicides because we need to know what was in their systems, what they were going through. You can tell if if they were choked out before they were hung. And they said we're burying too many people that are being listed as suicides that were actually homicides and no one's investigating them. So I have brought that out to them. And especially with all this drug use, people are getting crazy out there. But anyway, yeah, back to my brothers. Sorry. I always go off track and really suicide prevention advocate and stuff. So now you think about stuff like that. I know my brothers were. Bad thing about it is they weren't abusive, so they wouldn't be the ones to, be causing the abuse. And if these women are going to start beating on them, they're going to sit there and, they were raised right not to be the abuser. But then, I don't know how these women were raised because they want to beat on their men to the point where they're killing them. And so when missing and murdered women came about, it's like, I was, really behind it and everything, but when it became, they started acknowledging that men were killed by their significant others and stuff, that's when I was like, yes, word needs to be put out there because that does happen. Never in my life did I think I would be burying my two brothers because of women. I never did. my first instinct as their sister, as their protector, because even though my brother Lyle was older than me, I was, like I said, I was his keeper. I was his power of attorney. I was Lionel's older sister. He would get in trouble and stuff. People would be upset at him. He could call me a lizard, and I just knew it was him. There's more than a few times when somebody would be knocking on my door and it would be him. You know, he'd make his way over from Idaho, just happy to be coming to visit and stuff. And, you know, they could both frustrate me. They could, but they were my brothers and I loved them. And they didn't need to die like this.
My name is Lynelle Pokibro. I'm from the Shoshone Bannock tribes in Fort Hall, Idaho. So on January 11th, 2017, I received a phone call from my brother's girlfriend, Bobette, and she had called to tell me that my brother, Lionel Pokibro, and he's my twin brother, had passed away, and she said he had asphyxiated and he was dead in her home. I didn't know how to react to the news. I called my daughter to let her know to tell my dad, but my dad had already gotten to the residence, which is in Fort Hall, Idaho, and when we got, it was a really weird scenario. I don't even know who some of the people were that were there. And his girlfriend Bobette was just chain smoking. The investigators and the police were at the residence, and they were doing their investigation, I guess, and finally they let us be able to see his body. And she had went in first, and when she got up to go in, she was limping really bad. We were like, "What happened to you?" She said she slipped on the ice because it was winter. It was pretty icy outside. And I didn't think anything of it. And when me and my father got to have our time with him, she would not leave the room. She sat next to him the entire time and kept holding his head and wiping his nose because he had blood in his nose and like some foam stuff coming out. And I asked her, "Well, what happened?" And they said, "Well, he was really drunk. He fell. He hit his head on this table, and basically, I guess they just left him there. And supposedly, he had asphyxiated." But when I asked how he was laying, she told me he was on his side. And I was like, well, and I made this comment to the FBI when I was talking to him and was like, well, my armchair forensic scientist tells me that if he was laying on his side, gravity would have took some of the stuff out. And I was like, there's no puddles here. What? I don't understand what happened. And he, like I said, she wouldn't leave the room. And that was the story I got at the scene. And my dad sang a song for him, or like a prayer song. And that truly broke my heart when I heard that. My dad was devastated. Then we waited for the coroner to finish what he needed to do, and then the funeral home came, and they took him. And then we went to the funeral home later to go make our arrangements. And when we were there, I think she actually beat us to the funeral home. And we were in there talking, making our arrangements, and she had my brother's wallet. And my dad was like, "What are you doing with that?" And so we, got it from her. And I was given the paperwork, since he's my twin brother, to review, the social security number, all his, what do they call those? All his information, his, date of birth,
Mhm.
his age, social security number, his address, stuff like that. And so I don't know his social security number, so that's when she brought out that wallet. My dad was upset about it. And we had noticed bruising on the side of his head by his ears. And my dad was really upset. And he kept asking her, "What happened to my son?" And she wouldn't say nothing. And so I reviewed the information, and I remember seeing a time on there of his date of death, the time of death. And I took a mental note of it. And I'm not really sure what happened in there. I can't really remember, but she was acting like the caring girlfriend. And then after we made our arrangements and got our obituary written, we went into this private room where the family could, view him. And then that's when we noticed more bruising on his head, his arms, and we didn't know what happened. And so all throughout the planning of his funeral, we kept asking for the police or somebody to come look at him. And they just kept telling us, "Well, those are old bruises." And I was like, "No, old bruises are like a yellow or green in color. They're not black, or, because they were black bruises, especially by his ear." But none of the authorities would come and talk to us. And later, we were getting to the day of the burial, and two people had approached me, two of his friends, and they were like, "Hey, Lynelle, there's something we need to tell you." And Lionel did not look like that when we left him that night, because the party, it turned out they were having a party. Alcohol was involved, and it was on a Sunday night. And so these two people told me, like, he didn't look like that when we left him. He didn't have those bruises. And I was like, "What happened?" They said, "We don't know." And I was like, "You guys need to go to the police and tell them all this." And so then I had told my aunts, and they were the ladies who raised me and my brothers. And we didn't know what to do, because, as Native Americans, Indian families, you do certain things, you do your burial within those certain days, according to your traditions.
Mm.
So we had the 4 days that we needed to put him down, and I didn't know. They kept asking me, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." We got our 4 days. We're at our 4 days. The police won't come out. I was still calling them to come look at him, but nobody would come out. And so we decided as a family to go ahead and have the burial. And the whole time, the mother and her son were mingling around. They were there acting like they were caring, but I think they were just watching us to see what we were going to do, because as it turned out later, they got in a fight. My brother and the girlfriend got in a fight over, I think it was because he wanted to leave the party and she didn't want him to leave. And so the son, who I don't even know how old he was at the time, but he felt like my brother had disrespected his mother, the girlfriend, Babette. And so he started fighting with my brother, and he ended up kicking him in the head several times, and he killed him, knocked him out, and they let him lay there all night. And they didn't report the death until maybe 6 o'clock that morning. They called the police. They called the EMTs after they cleaned up their crime scene, fabricated their story, and the responding officer that got there, she performed CPR on my brother. He just got there, but I don't know what kind of story she told the officer when they got there. Later, I found out that there was the guy who beat up my brother. His girlfriend was in the house, and she heard everything. She seen what happened, and she's a little girl. She's small, petite, and she was afraid for her own safety, that she didn't want to tell the police or anybody what happened, because she was, she seen what this guy did to my brother, and she didn't know if this guy would do that to her. But she couldn't live with that guilt anymore, so she told her dad what happened. And her dad had told one of the close family friends what happened, and so that's how I found out that my brother was beaten to death by this kid. And later, as it turned out, because when I first walked into that house that January morning, I didn't think there was a party there. There was no beer cans around. There was nothing to show me that there was a party. Everything was cleaned up. I mean, it wasn't the best looking house, but there was no, evidence of beer, anything around. And so I guess I was thrown off by that, and the police were as well, because they cleaned everything up. So I'm guessing that while he laid there all night suffering, that they were cleaning their house and getting rid of all their beer bottles and beer cans, whatever. And later, as we started investigating it, and we had to practically get the BIA, or to get the FBI to listen to us. Like, we had to beg them, and they met with us. The coroner met with us, but it was so rude. It was hard to deal with, because they didn't want to listen to us. They didn't take it as a concern. They were very rude and unwilling to help. And at one point, one of my cousins made the comment, like, "You're just treating this as another case of another dead drunken Indian." And they were like, that's when we got a reaction from him, and it was like, no, that's not what it is. The FBI agent at one point started laughing, and my dad was pissed. I mean, he just got mad at him and was like, do you think this is funny? And the guy was like, no. And my dad told him, well, you were laughing. And he goes, no, I wasn't. And we're all looking at him like, we all heard you. You know, you're laughing. It's not funny. It was, we finally got them to listen. The coroner that was involved at the time was really rude. Like I said, I mentioned that I took a mental note of the time of his death. When I asked the coroner, where would that time come from? And he was like, well, from me. Where did you get that time from? And I told him, well, it was on the... And he goes, I didn't put anything on the death certificate. And I said, well, that was the time that was listed. And he got really rude and hostile towards me. And I was like, well, that's what was on there. And I go, well, what does your paperwork say? And he was like, well, I didn't bring it with me. And I thought, well, you knew you were meeting with us. Why would you not bring these things? And it was that kind of stuff we had to go through to try to get them to look at my brother's death. We ended up having to exhume him like maybe a month later after he was buried. And they sent him to Boise, Idaho to have an autopsy done. I've never asked for that report. I don't want to see it. The criminal investigator at the tribes had told me it was bad. And he was like, I don't think you want to see this. And he went through with trying to file paperwork to the U.S. Attorney's Office so we could get maybe some kind of hearing or something, but it never happened. As of this date, my brother's never gotten justice. The murderers, the mom and the son, are still walking free, and I just have this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness that my brother will never get justice. And I'm just still really lost that I can't go to anybody for help or to get his case heard. I do a lot of like podcasts on true crime. I listen to them a lot, and I've considered going there to tell my story, but I don't know if this case will ever be reopened because currently it is closed. And the guy who would be my brother, his girlfriend, the girlfriend who witnessed everything, she ended up leaving the guy, and she did do a video confession of what she's seen, what she heard. But she ended up, and a lot of these people that were there that night ended up falling into methamphetamine addiction. So their stories aren't credible because a lot of them have went on to serve time for their use and other crimes they've committed. And this little girl, the witness, had been involved in another case, and from what I understand is she lied to the FBI that was investigating that case, and so that ruined her credibility. And all my witnesses right now, their credibility is pretty much shot because I just feel like the case wasn't taken. And I'm not, when I was after the beating had occurred, and I got the Fort Hall police to look at it, they did start investigating it more. They went to because somebody had said they went to the liquor store and was buying, alcohol there, and they did pull up a video, the surveillance video, and it shows my brother walking in with the girlfriend, and she was walking normal. She didn't have the limp, but that next day she did. She was like limping bad. And I've learned that she's had so many lies going to different people she talked to about the death. She had a whole different story than what she told us, than what she told the police. She told the funeral home something else, something different, and none of this stuff will probably ever be used because it's a closed case, and I just feel like it will never go anywhere. I just feel like my brother's never going to get justice. I didn't realize that the tribes here only have a statute of limitations for like a year for this kind of crime, for the mom. I think they were going to try to get her on obstruction of justice. But the fact that we had to have 2 funerals for him was pretty upsetting to me and my aunts and the rest of our family. My dad was really close to him. A lot of the stuff that I talk about now, I've never told my dad because I just don't want to break his heart again.
Yeah.
It's really hard for him to deal with. He's really angry that, it wasn't taken serious in the beginning. And I just feel bad that I can't tell my dad some of this stuff because I know how upsetting it is to him.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot to mention that after he was exhumed and the autopsy came back, they did change the death certificate to a homicide. Why I say I feel hopeless in that he won't get justice, because even though it's labeled as homicide, I just feel like I don't even know where to go to try to get this case reopened.
Right.